All right. The first one is briefly describe your physical or cognitive domain intervention assignment from lessons 10 and 11. Would anyone like to start?
I'll start by saying that we weren't able to meet. My group wasn't, so I kind of don't have anything to report on that, which is not good, but.
Okay. So our group did, oh goodness, which one was that? Oh, sleep deprivation. So we created a guide to help parents that had children that weren't sleeping well, or yeah, I guess that's kind of it. So we did like a bedtime routine and how to create one, what would be an effective one, how to stick to it, that kind of thing. So that was what we did for ours. Anybody else want to share?
My group, we focused on speech delays and how parents can help their children and if they need to find help in other places. Sorry, I'm trying to review my presentation really quick. We focused on the age group of like 2 to 5 years old and talked about the characteristics of children in that age group and what things they should be able to do by that point, milestone-wise. And we also talked about the different kinds of therapy that are used. There's a group therapy, there's one-on-one therapy with someone who's certified to a speech therapist or a speech pathologist. And there's also home therapy where parents are the ones that facilitate the intervention with their own children. The group therapy is when children meet in groups. They can be small or large groups, and then they basically just go, like, they practice their language skills together. The goal of the therapy overall is to improve speech abilities, but perfection is never considered a real goal because it's so hard for anybody to reach speech perfection at that age. The pathologists that help facilitate the group therapy, they assess what the children are able to understand and what they can say back to you and what they're actually able to physically say, because there may be some syllables or words that they're not able to pronounce. I'm on the right track, right? We're talking about our project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say if I was rambling. What parents, we talked about for home therapy, what parents can do is that they can spend a lot of time emphasizing communication with their children and going over pronunciation and reading to your children is always a good way to promote language learning, and using everyday situations to kind of explain the world around them so that they kind of have a better understanding of how to explain it themselves. Some of the challenges that parents could face with speech delays is a lot of children with speech delays may have hearing impairments. I know that with my sister that was the case. She's deaf in one ear, so she had a really hard time developing language-wise. And then a lot of parents might struggle with the cost of therapy. And some ways to overcome those things are there are hearing aids available for children if they need them. Some children don't need them, but it really all depends on each child. And then cost of therapy, a lot of insurances will cover therapy, and then once they reach a certain age, a lot of times the local school districts will even cover the cost because it saves them money long term if they kind of nip it in the bud and take care of it while they're still developing and they haven't already solidified speech delays that are going to affect them for the rest of their lives, basically.
Awesome. Brittany, do you want to explain yours?
Yeah. Sorry, my kids are out there. They're making me listening to them. Okay, so our group did kind of the same thing. Were we in the same group? We did also hearing loss, but maybe it wasn't that. Yours was speech delay, right?
Yeah, I don't see your name on here.
I'm trying to like go back through my email because I'm like, oh, I gotta remember.
That's what I had to do. Oh, well, when did I do that again?
Anyway, okay, so we did ours on children with hearing loss, and we researched like different ways that the parents could help their children, and a lot of the thing that we came up with was it's like super important to identify that problem like early on, especially like in infants. When babies are born, you know, they do those hearing tests, right? Like the first day or second day they're born. And then if they feel like there's a delay, they obviously identify and let the parents know, but then they keep testing because sometimes it could just be like spinal, or not spinal, what's the fluid in the sac? I can't even remember.
Amniotic fluid.
So there you go. That could be, you know, just in the baby's ears for a few days, and then it can clear. And so they do like several testing while they're infants, and then if you know if the child gets older and if their hearing loss is obviously not very good or it's gone, then there's other programs that like can help. And nowadays there's so much technology that they have hearing aids that I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they go in through the skull and put this like magnetic thing in there, and then they put a hearing aid in the ear, and it makes the brain think, you know, different things so it can act like it's hearing. So anyway, there's lots of different ways parents can do that. Obviously stuff like that is really expensive, so you know, insurances sometimes will cover it and sometimes will not, so it just depends on the family if they can afford to go through those procedures or not. But and then also, you know, with hearing loss is the child needs to communicate, so they can do sign language or other things that if the child can hear partially, they can do some speech therapy that will still help the child distinguish and make words. I have a nephew that was born partially deaf, and so he did half sign language, but yet he could hear a little bit, so he would talk a little bit, but you could just tell on his face he just looked kind of confused all the time. And so his parents actually, he's gone through so many ear reconstructive surgeries to help him to hear, and so now he does have a hearing aid in his ear that helps him not hear 100%, but he's able to hear at least 75% of what people are saying, which is way more than he was able to before. So yeah, it was just interesting to research that and then to kind of tie it back into my own family, I guess, and just kind of see how parents deal with it and how there's ways to help children so they don't have to suffer, you know, and not be able to hear. I guess sign language is super important if they're completely deaf. But anyway, that was our group thing.
So I have a nephew that is like 2 months old, and he doesn't respond, I guess, and doesn't really like follow like your face or anything. And so my mother-in-law was like, "Oh my goodness, is he deaf? Like, we gotta get him tested and all of this stuff." Because she's like, "That's not normal." And so she was really worried about that. So that's.
I know, and it, like seriously, stuff like that is when you really probably should just be cautious, and it doesn't hurt to get them tested, you know, because if they have hearing loss, then it's going to cause them to have speech delays. So you don't want to have a double whammy. If you can prevent one, then the other one will still develop, you know.
Yeah, my sister, when she was born, they had no idea that she was completely deaf in one ear, and they didn't realize that she was deaf until she was probably almost 2. And that's the first 2 years of your life. You take in a lot of language skills. Like, those are really important years. And I don't know if back then they just didn't do the hearing testing like they do now, because my nephew was born last week, and the day after he was born, the hearing test lady was in there testing his hearing. So I feel like that's something they would have caught if they did that back then. So all the precautions that they do now are always really good. saves you long-term struggles.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I have a roommate now who is 80% deaf, and even with her hearing aids, it still leaves out that 20%. But you just have to, when we're talking to her, you have to make sure you're looking at her because she's really good at reading your lips. So that's a really important thing for us to like notice because none of us know like sign language or anything. So the easiest way to communicate with her is to just look at her, make sure she sees our lips. So what she doesn't hear, she can just read.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next bullet point?
I think I'm good.
Me too.
All right. So it says describe the social or emotional domain intervention that you researched this week. State whether you have actually implemented the intervention personally to address the identified problem. If so, discuss how effective the intervention was. If not, discuss research or other evidence assessing the effectiveness of it.
Okay, I can go first, I guess. Mine that I chose to do was bullying. And so, let's see. I'm going to look at my little chart. So the strengths and assets that they came up with was good communication. And like I was thinking for like students in schools and stuff. And then the interventions would be videos taught in the classroom to students, especially who are having problems with like being bullied or bullying. And then the people that are best equipped to give that are school teachers, principals, and guidance counselors in the school. So then I just looked at this website that has like the roles that the different roles that the kids play within bullying in schools and stuff like that. So it just said that it's really important when referring to these children not to label them and not to send messages about like their good or bad behavior, but to instead get the children involved, even like both sides, the people that are being bullied and the people that are bullying other children in their classrooms. And I didn't specifically implement this, but when I was in 6th grade, there was a boy in our class who had Tourette's, and so he just had a lot of like tics with like he would move his face a lot, and everyone was like, "What is he doing?" Like he didn't yell or anything, but it was hard for him because he thought everyone was staring at him and thinking different things about him, but they weren't necessarily saying it. So something that his family was able to implement, like in our school, was they brought, like one day they brought in a video about Tourette's and let us all learn more about it. So we kind of knew what was happening to him and how we should react to, like, not make him feel like he was an outcast because that was happening to him and stuff. So I thought something like that would be really important because children might not know what's going on, and that sometimes is a reason for them giving bullying to other people. So that was mine.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times bullying happens with kids who have special needs or different disability, like Tourette's or Asperger's or autism. A lot of times bullying happens because kids don't really understand what's going on with them. So like what that family did at your school is educate the kids and help them to understand why he's different. And I think that helps a lot with the bullying.
Yeah, I thought it was really important. It was a good idea.
And especially for like those are considered like invisible disabilities. Like you don't really, they're not. It's not something obvious. Like oh, they're in a wheelchair, or oh, they're like something that you can tell right away. It's something that you have to actually know personally to understand.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I guess I'll go next. Um, so I did mine on children that are really shy, and so I was kind of researching what um, interventions would be the best, like what the parents can do. So I chose this topic because I know a little girl she seems perfectly normal, like around her family and friends, but as soon as she gets around an environment that she's not comfortable with, she'll like start like talking like a baby, or she'll hide, or things that I was completely shocked when I found this out because I feel like perfectly normal. And so she has the ability, obviously, of like interacting and being normal, but she's just so shy that she kind of just shuts down um, when she's not comfortable. So a lot of the things that I researched, there were two articles in particular, and most of them said like parents can help them to interact with other kids, like take it slow, make sure they're comfortable, but be with them and try to get them to interact. And that was like the biggest thing. And they said if there's an extreme shyness, that usually you're gonna have to get like a counselor involved because there's probably some other issue that's not being addressed, like whether the child, I don't know, has like a scary past or something that caused them to like have this fear in them. So um, yeah, a lot of it. I mean, we've been learning about like temperament and stuff, and it didn't really talk about that much, but it pretty much just focused on the importance of the parent and what the parent can do in social interaction. So that's kind of what I learned about.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So my little girl is actually like really shy, almost to the point like, so I went and helped in her class last year, and one of the little girls comes up to me and she's like, "Why doesn't Chloe talk?" So I was like, she just doesn't. I guess she's just shy, you know. But I think that, like for myself with her, sorry, I'm really not crying. My eyes are just watering. Um, she, so she kind of had a speech delay when she was like little too, and she's 6 now, but we didn't catch the speech delay like until she started kindergarten, which was last year. And I think like part of the problem of her being shy was that she was afraid to talk. She was afraid people would make fun of her. And it was just silly things. Like her speech delay wasn't that bad. It was just she'd get her sounds mixed up. So she would say like instead of good with a G, she'd say dud with a D. You know, and so we tried to like help correct her at home, but it just wasn't enough. And so through the school they offered the speech pathologist, and she worked with her all year long, and she's like 100% better now. Like it's amazing how 1 year can really correct that. But as I talked to the teacher, and the teacher would say, yeah, she's really quiet in class, and she's, you know, her teacher said the same thing, like, I wonder if she just is nervous to talk because she's afraid she's going to say the wrong sound and sound funny, you know. But I think she's grown out of it now. Like she's building confidence, but she's still shy. Like my girls did a volleyball camp, and my oldest daughter had to tell like the instructors her name because Chloe wouldn't tell her name. Like she's just so shy like that. And so like as the parent, I'm like little by little trying to like encourage her, like, hey, when people ask you your name, they're just, you know, being friendly. You just need to tell them your name and not be scared, you know. Just try to make little comments here and there so that she knows, like, I don't have to, like, we call it the turtle shell, like she kind of like goes like this. And like, you don't have to be scared about people wanting to get to know you or talk to you, especially if you know them or if they're friendly, you know. But anyway, it's a real problem, and it's hard because you want your child to, you know, to be outgoing and to be interactive and do like what other kids do. But I think step by step I see progress. It's just, I think she just has to figure that out slowly on her own. So I don't know.
But you didn't actually get her any like outside help, but you just practice with her a lot more? Is that...
So I did go to a speech therapist in a clinic before she started kindergarten and got her tested, and the speech therapist said, yeah, she does have a few speech problems. You should probably keep her coming, and we did for like a couple months, and then our insurance wouldn't cover it, and it was like, I want to say it was like $120 for a 45-minute session per week. And so I was like, there's no way like we could keep doing this, but I knew she was starting school, you know, like in the next 3 or 4 months. So I'm like, okay, I'll just let her get tested at school, and then it's free. The speech therapist at the school is there and does it free all year long with them. And so then she did that there at school. They took her out of the classroom twice a week for 30 minutes and just worked with her, and she's like, honestly, it's like crazy how much she's improved just with that 1 year of, you know, helping her. So, I mean, it's exciting. Like, as a parent, I'm like, yes, like, she's doing awesome now, but she still needs to just now work through coming out of that shy phase and feel comfortable talking now. So, anyway, yeah, it's been...
It probably is a confidence thing. So, I served as a missionary in Brazil, and I was really shy at first. Like, I'm not a shy person, but I didn't have any confidence in my ability to speak Portuguese. And so I kind of forced myself to. Like, I knew I had to get over it, but, like, even now I don't have a lot of confidence because I haven't been practicing. So that could be, like, a huge thing, is just the confidence, like, being scared of saying the wrong thing if that was an issue before. So yeah. I feel like I can understand why she would be shy in that sort of thing.
I know. I would be the same way too if I had to learn a new language. I'd be like, I don't want to talk to anybody because I'm going to say something wrong.
Yeah, or your accent's so thick that no one's going to understand you anyway, or yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
When I was a kid, I had speech delays. Well, not speech delays. I had speech problems. I couldn't pronounce my S's. And I had the worst lisp you've ever heard in your life. And I had it all the way up through, they put me in speech therapy when I was in preschool. And I continued in speech therapy. And I did all the way through 4th grade. And I still had the speech impediment. And they eventually just told my mom, you know, this is her mouth. It's nothing that we can fix. She's going to need orthodontial work. So it took 3 years of braces to fix my lisp. So I had it until my freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Sometimes therapy doesn't even fix it, and that I had people make fun of me all the time. But I'm a pretty tough person, so I can like take care of myself. So people who make fun of me, they didn't last very long because I didn't put up with it.
Yeah.
But I definitely know the struggle of feeling like you're different from the other kids when it comes to talking, because kids love to find any reason to pick on you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, back to the bullying issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Go next.
Go next.
Sure.
Okay. So I did my research on like children who have a hard time like having anxiety about change in their environment or change in their routine. And like I know a few kids that I have seen that struggle with this a lot, and it's hard to watch because they get so emotionally distraught because they fear like change, and it messes their whole way of thinking up. And so I was researching like how to help with kids to, you know, like transition from one thing to the next better, like especially in school when, you know, the teacher says, okay, put your books down, we're going to go to PE, and sometimes like kids just are like, I can't go, you know, and they just get so like anxious about it. And so one of the things that I thought was, let me pull it up, was interesting was that it says, you know, like having a routine and helping children know what the routine is like the best way. And then to like prepare them for it instead of just throwing it at them and saying, put that down, we're going right here, right now. And they have like no time to like think or cope with it. Like, it's like giving them like a time limit. Like, okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to go to the grocery store. So, you know, you'll need to put down your book and we'll get ready to go to the store and stuff like that. So it's kind of like giving them a warning of like what to expect of what the next transition is going to be. And it's crazy, you know, like you think the simplest things of, hey, we're going to go to the grocery store, come on, hop in the car, would, I mean, it really can affect young kids because they mentally, some kids just have to like process the whole part of getting themselves prepared and ready to transition. And so it says in this research, it says the use of routines are important not only for giving children a sense of security and confidence, but also to guide them in developing a culture of thinking. And then it says, you know, when you have a routine, they're a repeated practice that creates patterns of thinking and learning and become part of the child's intellectual character. It's because, and then it says that routines are important because they activate children's prior knowledge and expand their thinking. So basically, having a set routine in the home, and I know at schools, like teachers try to create a routine with their learning, you know, like they do math in the morning and reading in the afternoon, and then they mix PE or music with that, and they usually display it so the kids know step by step what's going to happen next. But I think at home too, it's important like for parents to display, like especially if there's a routine like a bedtime routine, you know, like saying, okay, you're gonna, after dinner, this is what's going to happen, and then you kind of walk through the steps so that they are not thrown for a loop and cause, you know, behavioral, emotional problems and stuff like that. So I wanted to research that because my nephew actually has a really hard time with this even like at school. My sister says that he wakes up in the morning, every morning, like distraught. Like he doesn't want to go to school because he doesn't know like what's going to happen next, or he thinks the worst, like, well, what if I do this at school and then they're not supposed to do this, and he just analyzes things like so much. So she just says like she just has to talk him through everything before he gets on the bus. She's like, it's such a long morning because we have to sit down and we have to go through like, okay, you're going to get on the bus and then the bus is going to take you to school and then you're going to go to your classroom. Like she has to walk through step by step of what's going to happen. So anyway, I don't know if you guys have any comments or questions or advice.
Yeah, my mom has run a preschool through her home since before I was born. And when I was about 10, she took on this little boy who had to have a schedule. If the schedule was broken, it was the end of the world to him. It was terrifying. And even she had him from the time he was a baby. And she had him until he went off to kindergarten. And it kind of made me wonder if the fact that she kind of had a set routine every day made him that way, or if that's just how he was on his own, and then things changed, it threw him off. And I know that there are some kids who, like, as they get older, they start to get more and more anxiety issues, but it also begs the question, for this little boy in particular, did he turn out that way because he was in such a scheduled environment every single day, you know?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. In the preschool that I worked at this semester, we always had like the same schedule every single day, unless there was like a field trip or something else going on. But I thought one thing that we did that was super important was 5 minutes before we like stopped an activity, which was like it went into cleanup time, we would tell them, we'd give them a 5-minute warning, and then like that 5 minutes, and then we would sing a song so they kind of knew what was coming next. And that was really nice for a lot of the children because sometimes they'd be working on projects or something and they'd need to know, like, this is when I have to stop and I'll have to put it in my cubby and work on it later.
So did you have any kids in that class that would have meltdowns if the schedule like went off? Let's say you decided to go outside instead of do crafts first, or you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there were a couple children like that, especially this one girl. She would, like, if she didn't know that like outside time was starting earlier that day, or she could go outside, or maybe even have snack, she would just at the end of the day she'd be like, I didn't get to do this and I wanted to, and she just would have a total meltdown. So throughout the day, like after we noticed that, the next like week and stuff, we worked on telling her, okay, so snack goes from now to whenever, and you can go if you want to, but once it's put away, and you can't have it. So that was like an important thing to be able to tell her, like, you can go outside right now, or you can stay in and keep working on this, but we're going to be done in like 20 minutes or something like that. Or we would use the clock in our room and say, once the big hand gets to the 2, then that's when we're going to stop this activity. So that was really nice for her to be able to learn, to like kind of get the sense of time, but also be able to regulate her own emotions if she wasn't able to do that, if we had prepared her for it.
So I will not be surprised if my kids struggle with this because my husband's really like OCD and he likes to have a list of things that he's going to do that day. Like obviously it doesn't throw him off if we have to like change his schedule or that kind of thing. Like not that extreme, but he just like likes to know exactly what he's going to do. And so I just really have that issue of like needing to know exactly what's going to go on. It should make life interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting how everybody reacts differently to different situations in life. So, did she get cut out? I don't know where she went.
Yeah, wasn't she recording it?
I know. It says
It
still
still
says
says live on mine.
I know. So hopefully we're good. Oh no, no, it went out. Oh no, she's back.
Sorry, that was really weird. I just like my computer randomly just went to like BYU Idaho's website. I don't even know.
Oh,
I'm back.
Is it still recording good?
It still says live, so I hope so. Sorry.
I think it is. If it says live, it should be okay. I hope.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Brittany?
I don't remember. Do you want to go? Whoever needs to go next.
I think I'm the last one for this one. I wanted to look at children with the social, I can't think of the word. Mainly wanted to look at Asperger's syndrome, just because so many of the males in my family have Asperger's. My grandpa, my dad, my brother. It just seems like a lot of the guys in my family have Asperger's, and then I have nephews with autism, and they're on the same spectrum. So this is something that's always been personable for me, because I've seen it in action, and I've seen what therapy can do, and I've seen what not treating it can do. A lot of ways to tell if someone has Asperger's is if they're just the most awkward person socially. They have a hard time carrying on a two-way conversation. They don't understand they don't really understand emotions very well. They have a hard time understanding when someone is angry, or upset or sad. They have a hard time differentiating between them. And it can lead to a lot of problems because people expect them to to be able to read them. And it ends up with them doing a lot of inappropriate things socially, not gross inappropriate, but just like inappropriate in that situation. Like if you're at a funeral, you don't laugh kind of situation, you know. They have a hard time making eye contact. They have awkward movements and mannerisms, and this is my brother to a T all growing up. And a lot of times Asperger's is a comorbid disorder with other things like bipolar and Tourette's, and when you have all of that rolled up into one little person, that can be really hard, and it can mean that you go through your childhood with a lot of problems, a lot of situations that you don't understand why you're like that. You don't understand why people don't want to be your friend. And I watched that with my brother growing up, and that was always really hard to see him go from friend to friend because he didn't understand how to keep a friend and how to be a good friend and how to tell when someone was a good friend and when they were just being mean. He couldn't tell the difference. There are a lot of treatments that are available for Asperger's, and different areas provide different treatments that are more effective. There are cognitive behavioral therapy programs, and I knew a lot of this beforehand, but I did my research on a couple of different websites to find out the specific terms and exactly what they're used for. The cognitive behavioral therapy and group programs are really effective because Asperger's involves other people in your life. It's not just a singular person disorder. It involves how you interact with other people, which means group programs are one of the best options. You learn how to read each other. You learn how to be appropriate in a group. And a lot of experts, doctors, therapists feel that the earlier the interventions are started, the better the outcome is. So if you can treat a child with Asperger's when he's still in grade school, then he's more likely to go through school on a smoother note and be able to make more friends and everything. There are a lot of adults, because Asperger's is more of a recent diagnosis. They didn't like to diagnose people with Asperger's under the age of 20 up until about 15 years ago. So a lot of adults have Asperger's and don't realize that they have Asperger's. They were never diagnosed. They were never given treatment because back 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing. They thought that children couldn't be bipolar, but we know now that they can be. So as medicine advances, we're able to make earlier interventions and diagnoses. And sometimes people with Asperger's need medications. Personally, I think that medication should be a last resort because you don't want to become dependent on something like that for the rest of your life, when therapy is also a really good option. But the medications that are available, they have serotonin inhibitors, which kind of slows down your brain and it helps you think, process things a little bit more smoothly, I guess. But again, like, that's totally a personal choice. I know that would be my last option, would be medication for someone if that was my child. So yeah, that's what I researched mine on.
So my husband's a high school teacher, and he said that there's some students that are, like, so he's in high school math, and so these are kids that are like 9th, 10th grade at least. And he says that some of the students will come and they'll just be absolutely crazy. Like, they can't focus on a single thing, and then the next day they'll show up and they will be like zombies. Like, they have no personality, like they don't interact, like they're just complete zombies the entire day, and it's because of their medication. So he's like, man, like, that's kind of an extreme. Like, it works well with some kids, I guess, but he said it's really sad to see, like, the kids' personalities, like, gone because of this medication. So that's at least what I know a little bit about that. And then there was another lady, she said that her son was diagnosed Asperger's when he was like 25, and she said she had no idea the entire time he was growing up because she had the same expectations for him. So he performed just like her other children who didn't have it because that was like what she expected of him. And so I know there's like different degrees and that kind of stuff, but it just made me wonder like how much a parent can help depending on the severity of the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I don't really know a whole lot about Asperger's, so it's interesting just to hear, kind of how it affects them and people around them. And I've heard a few times people say, like, the medication is like you said, you're either really high or you're like really low. So it's just like you got to choose your battle or know which which way you wanted to take it, but interesting.
All right, should we keep moving along then? Any other thoughts or comments before we go to the next bullet point? Okay, so the next one is share highlights from the domain you can do with caregivers during lesson 10.
Oh gosh, I have to go look at mine.
I know, I was trying to think back on mine, like, okay, what were the highlights of it? While you're looking here, I'll just kind of like explain mine a little bit. I interviewed my friend who's a primary teacher. She's in Sunbeams, and she thought it was like at that age. She made it seem like a lot of it had to do with the parents and like how they were raised, because there'd be a girl that cannot handle any kind of emotion, or I don't know, like she'd break down over everything kind of thing, and then the other kids would be perfectly fine. And so that was a lot of insight that she gave, was like on this little girl and like the differences between kids in the class and like their emotional stability, and then being able to look at the parents and be like, well, this girl's in daycare all day long and all night long sometimes too, and so that's what she shared. And then the other one was a school teacher. Well, no, it was a school teacher, but over as well. And so he sees like everything as well. Like there's a boy with Asperger's, and there's a different kind of social awkward children. And it seemed like that was more the interaction they have with their peers and less their parents. I mean, obviously their parents have something to do with their personalities, like when they're young and then they grow up in those personalities. But I feel like there was a difference between like the younger kids were more influenced by their parents, the older kids were more like their peers and their choices and the personalities that they kind of started to show. So that's, and then there's like the different risks or problems with each of those two groups. So that's kind of how my interviews went, I guess, without going into like the specific risks and problems.
Okay, I'll share my highlights. One thing that I really liked was that the person that I was talking to was another preschool teacher that I am with a lot, and they're with children a lot. So one thing that they really focused on was the fact that not only parents have to be the people who can give the best like feedback and stuff for the children, or might be the best to implement it, because like yeah, parents are always there, but it was nice to see her focus on the other people too, because the parents aren't at school always. They aren't the ones in charge of them during the whole day, especially when they start going to school or like preschools and stuff. Just having those other people that they can rely on and have them help with these different domains that the children might need different interventions with. So.
Okay, sorry, I'll go. So some of the highlights that I found when I did my interview was that the girl that I interviewed, she talked about how like when she notices problems with her kids, like she takes it to like a deeper thought to know like, okay, is there something else that I'm missing here? You know, why are they acting out? Why are they doing this? And kind of like analyzes deeper, I guess, deeper emotions. And so she did mention that she actually went to the school counselor and talked with the school counselor and just explained like kind of the issues that they were having, and and wondered if the school counselor would pull her child in and help, maybe talk to her child so that her child can understand that there's ways to fix, areas that they're struggling in, and there's ways that they can help them, and to not be scared to talk to somebody about it. And if they're having a hard time at school coping with things, that they can always talk to their teacher or their mom when they get home from school, or even talk to the school counselor. And I just thought that was really neat that the mom pointed that out, and she recognized that for herself, that sometimes you need further help from teachers or counselors to kind of really make sure the child is progressing, and that they know it's okay to reach out for help with professionals and not to be scared. So that was
One of my favorite topics that came up in my interviews, I was talking to my sister, and she has 3 boys, ages 8, 6, and 2, I think. And she really lately has been focusing on building up each child and their self-esteem. You don't really realize that, because a lot of girls have body image issues, but you don't really think about the fact that boys have body image issues as well. My nephew, who's, I guess he's 7, one of the kids in the neighborhood told him that he had chicken legs because he has really skinny legs. And now he refuses to wear shorts because he doesn't want people to see his little legs. And my sister just, she goes, it's hot outside. Like, yeah, you have little legs, but you know what? That makes you a fast runner. And so she finds a way to kind of turn it around and help him to see that, okay, this person isn't being very nice, but what's the good thing about this? Like, okay, your legs are small, but they make you a good runner. You can swim faster because your legs aren't so heavy. And I'm trying to help build him up. I've seen this lately. My boyfriend's daughter is 4 years old, and we'll just be hanging out and doing stuff, and she'll say, "Oh, my tummy's so big," and she's 4, and I look at her and I'll say, "Nana, like, your tummy is perfect. You don't have to worry about your tummy being too big." But the fact that they're influenced so young by their body image issues, by self-esteem, that's something that parents can always work on, is building them up, making them feel good about themselves, and helping them to know that everyone's different, that no 2 people are the same. So that was one of my favorite things that came up in the interview, and then from my personal experience as well.
I know a teenage boy who actually also struggles with that. Like, he's borderline anorexic, which I thought, like, be the opposite of what a teenage boy wanted to be, because I thought, like, they wanted to be, like, masculine, be able to, I don't know, be strong in sports and that kind of thing. But he has 2 sisters and a mom who's also worried about her appearance, and his father's also kind of worried about his appearance, and so he's worried about, like, looking too fat. And it, like, hadn't even occurred to me that would ever cross a teenage boy's mind. So it was really sad when I found that out. But your comment just reminded me about that. So.
And it's important to not only teach self-esteem, but also teach how to be healthy. Because if they do grow up and they're not physically healthy, like, you want to make sure that you're giving them the best quality of life that you can. You want to teach them how to exercise, how to eat right, how to take care of themselves, body, minded, spirit kind of thing. I think that's really important.
Well, I feel like there's also, like, there should be a balance between that. So one of my companions was a very large person. Like, she knew it, and she, like, embraced it, and it wasn't a big deal to her. So, like, as a missionary, like, she tried to stay healthy and keep her weight down. But then I see her and her husband now, and, like, it's not healthy. And so I'm like, there's a happy medium between, like, you need to be happy with yourself, but at the same time, like you said, like you need to be healthy and exercise and take care of yourself. So I think it'd be really hard if the child struggled with that because you want to help them, but also not hurt their self-esteem. Because really, if you say one thing like chicken legs, like the kid's going to remember it and make decisions because of that. So I feel like that's really a tough ground to be in. So
Yeah. It's like you're like there's a little girl that's in my parents' home ward that her mom is really really into exercising, and that's great, but she makes it such a big deal in front of her kids, like, oh, I need to lose this much more weight, and she's always weighing herself in front of her kids. And it's one thing to be health conscious, but when you're passing on these, it's like an obsession for her almost. And her daughter is always like, oh, I can't eat that, when she's a kid, like she should be allowed to, every once in a while, have a sweet. But because she's seen her mom obsess and obsess and obsess, she's become that same mindset. So you have to find a good happy medium in there of being healthy, but also being confident in yourself, and that has to be really hard. Like I don't like when I have my own children. Like I have my boyfriend's daughter, but it's not quite the same thing. Um, I've been with them for like 2 years, but I don't know. That's just having someone look up to you like that. That's crazy. I mean, Brittany, like I've seen your little girls running around. Like it must be hard trying to be a good role model for everything, right? I mean,
Yeah, so we often have discussions like talking about how it's important to eat healthy foods, so our bodies stay healthy and kind of teach them the importance of that. But, we allow them. I mean, my kids have way too much sugar. But I don't like obsess about it and say, oh, you cannot have that, like I don't make it a big deal, but I let them know, like, okay, well, if you're going to eat that, you've got to wait till you have some healthy dinner and then you can have your popsicle, something like that, so they know like your body needs like the nutrition and the healthy food, and then sometimes it's okay, you can have your sweet or your popsicle or whatever you're dying to have. But we've made it a rule in our house because I mean girls, oh, they're hard, but especially my oldest, like she already knows, like, like picks up on like body image and stuff, and we've just had the talk, like nobody will ever in our house call each other like fat or chubby or anything, because that is just not accepted. Like that is so rude and you hurt people's feelings, and we never call each other those names. And they know, sometimes they'll be mad at each other and say, you're so mean, you're so chubby, I'm telling mom, stuff like that, just to get back at the other sister. But they just know, like, that's not accepted, and they're going to be in a timeout or in trouble, because I think when they keep labeling each other as those things, then they really do have, like, they think, well, maybe I am. So it's just like a big no-no. We don't even talk about that in our house. But it's hard. Having girls is really hard.
all right, are you guys ready to move on to the last part? Okay. So it sounds like the last part we're supposed to like identify common elements, effective interventions, targeted to different problems or different domains, and then conclude by sharing like our best insight, and then we'll have someone summarize everything, and then we should be done. So I feel like one of the common elements, like any intervention in any domain or anything, like was the influence of the parents on like finding out that there's a problem, I guess, like recognizing it, and then helping the child get whatever help they need, whether it's working with it at home or getting them into a specialist, that kind of thing. But I think in all of ours is like, okay, what are the parents going to do about it? Like that's going to be the biggest influence. Is there any other common elements that you guys noticed?
I think you hit the nail on the head, really.
All right. Sounds good. Conclude by sharing your best general insight or suggestion about effectively intervening to foster optimum development.
I think catching it early and like what you were saying about the parents, like parents being able to see their children need something and then catching it early and giving early intervention so those things don't become more difficult for the child and like family members later on.
Yeah, and I think that like, parents are the best advocate, and nobody wants more for their children than the parents, you know? Like, some random stranger isn't going to know what your child needs. You know what your child needs. And it's important that, like, parents are willing to accept help when they need it and not be worried about a label or things like that. If the child needs help, it's important to get the help and monitor what needs to be done.
So I'm pregnant right now, so I don't know if I would be considered a parent or becoming a parent, however you want to look at it. But so I always worry, like, how, like, if my kid isn't crawling or walking or speaking or that kind of thing, like, at what point as a parent do you get worried? Like, because there's not really anything that's normal. Like, there's not, like, every kid starts crawling at 6 months or 7 months kind of thing. So I'm like, I worry about, as a parent, not knowing or not being able to catch something because I just figure that the kid's taking their time or, like, if their individual personality. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree. And it's so funny because, is it your first?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Hi. She did her own lipstick.
Pretty.
So I remember those feelings too, like, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. How do I know if this is wrong? And like, honestly, and I know many people probably tell you this, but it's kind of like that mother's intuition. Like, you just have a sense of knowing when you feel something's just not right. But like with all of my girls, they each crawled at different ages. Like my oldest, she didn't walk till she was almost like, I want to say like 16, 17 months old, you know, and I kept worrying, like, all these other infants and toddlers are, you know, progressing, and why is she so slow? And, you know, you go to your regular doctor checkups, and they get their immunizations, and they always, you know, if you have a good pediatrician or a good doctor, they'll always ask you questions and make sure that they're on, you know, on track with their milestones. And if you do have a concern, I would just express it to them, and they can watch it and, you know, say, okay, well, in 2 months, if they're not doing this, then maybe we'll do like some further testing or analyzing just to make sure, you know. So I would just like keep in good touch and good contact with your doctor if you do feel like there's an issue, and then they can help you and go from there on what needs done to help so there's no delay.
So I'm having a boy, and he had, like, my sister-in-law's, he's just had a baby boy too, so there's going to be 4 baby boys in the family within like 6 months, and I'm like, it's going to be even harder because he's going to be the last, so I'm going to be like, oh, he's so close in age, like, why isn't he keeping up, or I don't know, like, I worry that I'm going to push him too hard or worry too much, but that makes sense, but I don't know. Stay in touch with the pediatrician, and I guess I'll try not to worry about it too much. So we'll see. But, all right, any other general insight or suggestion about effectively intervening, anything like that? All right, would someone like to volunteer to summarize the highlights of our group's conversation?
Oh, that's what we just did.
Was that?
Was it not what we just did?
Well, so that's the thing. I feel like it is. So there's like one bullet point that's like, what are the common things in your conversation? And then there's one that said, what's your best general insight? And then it said to have one group member summarize. But I kind of...
I think we did that.
Okay, well, that sounds good. All right,
Yeah.
so we're good then?
And
Yeah,
Chanel, you're gonna turn it in?
Yes. I need to know what link specifically, because obviously I'm having issues with links. So
I've never,
I think
until
I've
this
used
class,
the
I've never
YouTube
used
link.
it.
Okay, so
I
I
think once you're done, it's like posted, and then you can just copy and paste that link to the teacher.
Wait, say that again?
So once we're done, like you'll hit end the call or whatever, and then it'll come up with where it is on your YouTube channel, and that's the one that you'll send to the teacher.
Okay, sounds good. I will try and do that then. So. All right, well,
Good
have a good
talking.
day.
Thanks, girls.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.